Hi, it's Perspective here, and we have a very interesting session today, very interesting conversation. This series, I would typically be sharing pretty much my major lesson for that period, for that era. For me, this period, this era is trust. If my expectation is limited to what I already know, how do I move forward? Being immersed in an experience that brings me so close to self-trust. You can call it a trust fall. I'm gonna just paint how I feel, how it flows, whatever comes. So I tried so hard not to think about this beforehand, which is pretty difficult because I'm pretty much a planner, which is why I am going on this journey. And I will be talking about self-trust. I'll be talking about the concept of trust, whilst I also share some of my processes or steps as I paint. I would be thinking out loud what next I want to do on this canvas, why I chose that. So guys, come. Yeah, let's get into it. First, we need to decide on what color. I'm definitely in my red era, and for me, red signifies passion. Red signifies fire. I'm at this point where I'm very passionate about what I'm doing, and there's just this fire burning inside. So red. I also just naturally gravitate towards red, orange, and those warm tones. They suit my skin. Maybe not red because I naturally gravitate towards that. Maybe we should do something completely different. I'm also thinking of doing something abstract, playing with shapes and contrast. Enough said about the artwork. We're just gonna get right into it and make our canvas look pretty. So whilst I paint, I will talk about trust. Or trusting the process. So the first thing I like to do is water my canvas, because that kind of just helps make everything smoothly. So let's talk about trust. Trust is, for me, no fear, because distrust is fear. So trust is no fear. What does it even mean to be fearful, right? What does it mean to have fear that prevents you from trusting? So if you've been following my YouTube channel episodes, I speak about, doing the inner work that transforms you from your wounding to your truest self. And I think distrust has been such a theme in my past, and that's something that I'm still working through. So overall, I think distrust comes from not trusting in self. I believe trust in self, trust in God, trust in life are synonymous, because it's all connected, all one. So if I say I do not trust myself, somehow I do not trust God to handle it. Somehow I do not trust that life would figure it out. I do not trust that there is a greater good. I do not trust that there is a greater intelligence at play. which you can call God. So, that being said, lack of trust is synonymous to all of these. Okay, now it's time to select my colors. You know what? Let's do like a burgundy, reddish, brownish vibe. Let's see how that would look. So I said I want to create a contrast, right? So I'm thinking this would be the background, and then we can paint a lighter color as the middle, as the inside, to create that contrast. Okay, so back to trust. Trust is saying, I don't have all the answers. As a matter of fact, I don't know it all. Things are out of my control. Things are beyond my expectations, below my expectations. Things just are the way they are, and I can do nothing about that. So typically, when you've experienced a loss of some sort, it's easy to fear the future. It's easy to fear the unknown, and then try to control and have expectations from life, from people around you, from yourself. And all that takes away from the self. The expectation that life has to go a certain way, that things have to be in a certain capacity, that you have to show up in a certain way for you to feel whole. That's an illusion. That's the illusion that births fear. And when we start understanding how we are enough, because this is something that, again, I've been observing in myself and just generally. When I start affirming and staying strong, and not just affirming as words, but also seeing it through to ensure my actions match up to the things that I say. And being able to choose different when I find myself in those scenarios or opportunities where I can do things differently. I'm grateful for that to start with. And for every present moment, we have that opportunity to be in the now, to be in the present. Because when we start envisaging a future, when we expect the future to look a certain way, when we try to control the future, when we try to control whatever outcome, then we're taking away from the present moment. When we try to plan and prepare and ensure that things are a certain way, then we're taking away from the flow of life. And ultimately, we resist life. So yes, being fearful is a step in the direction of resisting life. And that's something I've been observing. Because why do I need to resist what is if I don't have something to prove? Right? If I feel that I am worthy just because I exist, if I feel that I am worthy, if I feel that I am enough as I am, then regardless of what happens, it should be fine, right? Like, I'll be fine. Trust. So Yeah, I think it's interesting that not being able to trust is synonymous to resisting life, you know. And for me, it's understanding that as things have played out for me, as I've been more aware of my tendencies to not trust as opposed to trusting, and seeing how that is me resisting life, it makes me observe those experiences that I would run away from, that I would try to control, that I would dismiss as this is not how it should go. It makes me observe them closely and appreciate them. Because for every time I'm in a low place, in quotes, for every time that I am struggling, in quotes, yet again, it sheds light on me resisting. And because in that moment, I catch myself resisting life, resisting the flow, resisting the greater play out of things that I cannot control. Because I find myself resisting, that tells me that that opportunity right there is where my true self can emerge. That opportunity right there is the time where I can choose differently. That opportunity right there is telling me, Pearl, you don't have to hold on to these external things. You don't have to be fixated on these attachments that in a way have validated that sense of self or identity. You don't have to. You are whole, you are enough. At this point, you have to reinforce that you are enough just because you exist, just because you have become this version of self that even knows that she's enough. So I take that opportunity to not only remind myself, to not only affirm that I am enough, but to ensure that my words match my actions. And so when I was preparing for this amazing session today, there were so many opportunities for me to fixate on how I want this to look, on the perception of what I feel it should be like, on the expectation of what I think, how I want it to be, how it is supposed to be, the perfect way that I have seen things, that I have observed from my interaction with other people, with other people's art. So now I have this perception of how it should be. But guess what? And this is where the trust in God, trust in life becomes more tangible. Yep, we are painting, and I love this part. So I also like to wet this away. But here is where the trust in God comes in. Because ultimately, I know that my perspective in life is limited to only what I have experienced, to only what I know yet. So that already underscores a huge limitation. If I desire to evolve as a person, if I desire to embody my truest, most authentic version of self yet, then how do I measure up my current reality by metrics, by yardsticks, by experiences of the past? How do I know what else could be if I'm so stuck on how I expect it to be? If my expectation is limited to what I already know, how do I move forward? So I caught myself in the loop of wanting to prepare, of wanting to know, of wanting to confirm, of wanting to ensure. And I said, no. That's the exact opposite of what we're trying to do. So we're gonna let that thought pass by because the eye can observe enough not to attach itself. And I am aware that I can, just as you can, for everything I'm saying, it's just a reflection of the experiences that you choose to have. So as much as I am saying I, you can replace it with you can replace it with we. I am you, you are me. So I said, nope, this is not what we're doing. Not having a plan can be the greatest plan, because there is a greater plan. Now, what stops me from believing that it's okay not to have a plan in the first place? Because one, I'm fixated on the future. Two, I want to confirm that I would have it figured out. Three, I fear that I may not have what it takes when that comes. So I try to perfect, I try to think, I try. I keep trying, so I never am. So I never embody. Whew. The idea that there is a perfect reality that exists and that we are constantly trying to chase that perfection so that we find freedom is an illusion. One, there is no perfect reality as far as I am concerned. The perfect reality is the reality that you're currently experiencing. The perfect reality is what is. Because all is perfect. From an unconditionally loving perspective, all is perfect. And when you start loving yourself unconditionally, you start loving everything unconditionally, then things don't have to appear a certain way. Things just are what they are, and you honor that. As far as I'm concerned, I am always going to be a work in progress. And the idea that there is a destination somewhere where I would arrive as this thing, again, an illusion. Because we're continuously moving. Then the beginning becomes an end at some point, and the end becomes a beginning again. So yet again and again and again, we find ourselves in these realities where There is no end, there is no perfection. What is perfect. That's why it is. And that is enough for you to make the most out of that experience. But how do we make the most out of an experience when we're constantly fixated